Your cat may forget where they left their favorite toy. They may forget yesterday's strange sound in the hallway. They may even forget the exact place where they last knocked something off your table. But some moments, those stay far longer than most people realize because cat behavior is shaped not only by instinct, but by emotional memory, not human style memory, not nostalgia in the way we understand it, but repeated emotional association, safety, comfort, what's stress, trust, predictability, connection. And once those feelings become attached to everyday experiences, they begin shaping how your cats understand life with you. That's what makes understanding cats so emotional, because some of the smallest interactions you barely notice may become some of the most meaningful emotional patterns of their entire life. The way you greet them in the morning, how your voice sounds when you enter a room, whether touch feels comforting or overwhelming, what happens when you leave, how you behave when they feel weak, whether your presence feels safe. And perhaps the most heartbreaking truth in feline psychology is this: your cat may spend their entire life hoping for certain emotional experiences without ever having words to explain them. That is the hidden emotional world of cats. So, in this felunee cat documentary, we're exploring 7 deeply meaningful acts of love your cats quietly hope for throughout their lives. Not because they are needy, but because cat psychology is built around trust, emotional safety, and connection. And by the end of this, you may understand your cat more deeply than ever before. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what tiny thing does your cat do every day that feels strangely emotional? Because I promise, it probably means more than you think. 1. The touch your cat secretly hopes. You understand humans often assume affection means touching more. More petting, more holding, more cuddling, more physical closeness. But feline psychology works differently because cats do not define affection by quantity, they define it by emotional safety. That means the kind of touch matters far more than the amount. Watch your cats closely. Where do they initiate contact? Most emotionally bonded cats naturally press their cheeks, their forehead, the side of their face against humans they trust. That isn't random cat behavior. Those areas contain scent glands connected to familiarity, territory, and emotional reassurance. When your cat rubs those areas against you, they are performing social scent exchange, a kind of feline emotional language. They are saying, "You belong in my safe world." That's profoundly meaningful. And understanding cats means paying attention to where they naturally invite connection. Gentle cheek rubs, predictable forehead contact, slow, calm touch. These often feel far safer than sudden grabbing or overstimulating petting because trust grows through predictability, not intensity. This is one of the most misunderstood cat trust signs. Humans often focus on giving affection. Cats often focus on receiving safe affection. That difference changes everything. 2. Your voice is one of their emotional anchors. Many cat owners underestimate this completely. Your voice matters, not necessarily every word, but emotional tone? Absolutely. Cats become deeply familiar with the sound of their human, the emotional rhythm, the pacing, the energy. Your cats quickly learn how your voice sounds when you are calm, happy, rushed, frustrated, loving, stressed, tired, sad. That's a huge part of cat psychology because cats are emotional pattern readers. And familiar vocal patterns become emotional landmarks. Think about everyday moments: talking while making coffee, greeting them from another room, saying their name casually, narrating nonsense while they watch from the couch. These moments may feel meaningless to humans, but repeated familiarity creates emotional stability. And emotional stability creates trust. This is why sudden changes in tone can affect cats so strongly. Raised voices, sharp frustration, unpredictable emotional energy. Cats notice immediately.
Because voice becomes part of their emotional environment.
And when that environment feels stable, your cats feel safer. 3. The morning ritual. They quietly treasure. So many cats do this. Early morning, soft footsteps, watching your face, a paw touch, a tiny chirp, a gentle meow, a silent stare from the edge of the bed. And humans often assume food. Sometimes yes, but sometimes something much deeper. Morning reconnection matters because after separation, however small, social confirmation matters emotionally. The relationship resets, safety resets, normalcy resets. Your response becomes meaningful, not because your cat demands elaborate rituals, but because acknowledgement creates emotional predictability. A slow blink, a quiet greeting, gentle eye contact, soft touch, simple presence. These are powerful cat trust signs. They communicate, I'm here. Everything is okay. For emotionally bonded cats, this matters enormously. Because understanding cats means recognizing that many repeated routines are emotional anchors, not just habits. That morning check in, it may be one of the quietest love rituals in your shared life. 4. Respect the moment they say enough. This may be one of the deepest lessons in cat body language meaning. Every cat has a threshold, and most cat behavior problems begin when humans miss it. At first, purring, relaxed posture, leaning, and soft body language, then subtle signals appear: tail twitch, ear adjustment, skin rippling, body tension, eye widening, pause, and then suddenly bite, swat, escape. Humans call this unpredictable. It usually isn't. It's communication. Cats are incredibly boundary aware animals. And when your cats realize their signals are respected, trust grows dramatically. Because your cat learns this human listens. That changes emotional safety profoundly. A cat whose boundaries are consistently ignored may begin anticipating stress before touch even begins. That's how emotional distance develops. But a cat whose signals are respected, that's where deep trust begins. One of the greatest acts of love is simply stopping sooner, listening earlier, pausing faster, letting your cat choose what happens next. That's powerful feline psychology. 5. The way you leave home shapes emotional security. Humans leave automatically. Keys, shoes, bag, door, gone. But your cats notice everything. Because cats are masters of pattern recognition. Departure rituals become emotionally meaningful. Some cats quietly observe. Some sit near the door. Some become unusually affectionate beforehand. Some disappear. Some become watchful. That does not automatically mean severe separation anxiety. But it does mean your departure has emotional meaning, and predictability matters enormously. Cats do not understand time the way humans do, but they absolutely understand repeated emotional patterns. Calm exits help, predictable routines help, consistency helps. Not dramatic emotional goodbyes, not frantic energy, just stable, repeatable patterns. Because predictable departures reduce emotional uncertainty, and uncertainty creates nervous system tension. This is one reason emotionally healthy homes often look boring, because boring means predictable, and predictable means safe. 6. What sick cats quietly hope for. This is one of the most emotional parts of understanding cats. When cats feel weak, everything changes. A physically vulnerable cat becomes emotionally more sensitive to safety, and humans often make one of two mistakes: too much distance or too much pressure. Some owners disappear emotionally, others hover constantly, but many cats quietly need something in between: presence, without pressure, calm proximity, without forced interaction. A sick cat may not want constant touching stimulation, handling attention demands, but many still deeply value trusted presence. The same room, quiet companionship, soft emotional energy. Simply being there, this communicates something powerful. You are not alone. That matters, especially for bonded cats. Not every cat wants closeness while sick, but many want choice. And choice is one of the deepest themes in feline psychology because emotional safety often means control. 7. The final gift your cat hopes. For this is the hardest truth, and maybe the most meaningful. Cats hide weakness instinctively, it's survival, but eventually every life enters fragile moments. And in those moments, what your cat may need most is emotional safety, not panic, not chaos, not denial, not frantic emotional energy. Safety, calm voice, gentleness, familiarity, quiet, predictable presence, because bonded cats experience emotional environments, not just physical ones. And even in life's most difficult moments, the nervous system still responds to emotional familiarity: your voice, your scent, your calm, your quiet reassurance. This is not about giving up. It's about honoring emotional comfort. Because for animals who spend their entire lives learning whether the world feels safe, that final emotional environment matters profoundly. And perhaps that is one of the greatest acts of love a human can ever offer. If there's one truth understanding cats teaches us, it's this: cats are not emotionally simple. They may look independent, quiet, mysterious, composed, but beneath that calm exterior is a nervous system constantly learning from every repeated interaction, every morning greeting, every respected boundary, every calm goodbye, every gentle voice, every safe touch, every quiet moment of trusted companionship. That's what many cats quietly hope for across their entire lives. Not perfection, not endless stimulation, not dramatic human affection. Safety, predictability, trust, emotional understanding. And maybe that's why loving cats changes humans so deeply. Because cats teach patience, observation, listening without words, respect without control, connection without force. They teach us that emotional intimacy does not always look loud. Sometimes the deepest love is incredibly quiet. A slow blink, a forehead press, a cat choosing to sleep near you, a soft morning check-in. That is trust. And trust may be one of the most precious things your cats ever give you. So I want to ask you, which of these moments have you shared with your cat? Morning rituals? Boundary lessons? Departure routines? Quiet sick day companionship? Tell me in the comments. I read every story. And if you love understanding cats, cat behavior, cat psychology, cat body language meaning, cat trust signs, and the hidden emotional world of your cats, subscribe to Felunee Cat. Because once you truly understand your cats, everything changes.